Killed you dead, I got you right in my head. Hello everyone, welcome to the latest episode of The Devil's Mouth. It is our 50th episode, so an anniversary of sorts. We're getting a bit long in the tooth. We've had quite a number of really wonderful guests in the past 2 years, and fortunately our music scenes are very rich, and we still have a great number of guests that have great potential to appear here. And for episode 50, we thought we needed someone special, so we have with us an entity that is not exactly earthly, a very mysterious and dark figure who is rumored to have a human presence, someone called Huvert Elefsen, but most of you probably know the strange creature known as Mortiis. So here he is. Hello, Mortiis / Huvert. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. How are you?
Very good, very good. Very happy to have you here. Very pumped up with that song that we have just heard, Demons Are Back, and very excited about the list of 10 songs that we are about to discuss. So all in all, it feels like it's going to be a very special episode, as it should be. Starting by the Mortiis song, before we go into some of your other current affairs, I gave you the liberty to pick the song, and you thought Demons Are Back from The Great Deceiver album from 2016 was the most appropriate one to go with your 10 songs. So do you harbor particular feelings for this song?
I don't know if I harbor particular feelings about it. I mean, I have a special relationship with the entire album. I mean, that's a really long story, but it just felt like it was appropriate because it's a pretty heavy song, and it's got a lot of those little metal type of elements to it, and I figured that might be appropriate for this show, especially considering the 10 songs that I picked out, which were by and large, I guess, a selection of sort of older heavy metal and some pretty, what I felt was fairly dark, sort of punk, crusty type music, like G.B.H. and Amebix, and we're going to get to that, obviously, but that was like my sort of instinct. And when you asked me for a song, my instinct just said, well, Demons Are Back should probably work. So it took me about 2 seconds. I didn't. It wasn't like I sat down and analyzed everything, but it just felt like that one would probably go okay, I guess, with all the other stuff. Yeah, so it was just
when I saw your pick, I immediately agreed. So I think your gut instinct was very right on this one, and you are right.
First time for everything.
Exactly. I'm sure it's not the first time. As you said, we will get to that in a bit. But your list, and dear listeners, do pay attention. Your list features almost exclusively stuff from the 80s, and there's some very classic names there, and perhaps a couple of discoveries there for people less into the further reaches of the 80s underground. So stick around, because this is going to be good. Before we get into that, this song that you picked is from what is commonly known as the third era of Mortiis. You have since sort of moved back to the territory, that musical territory that you were in the first era. Where exactly are you now regarding Mortiis? Are you writing? Are you planning? In what state of kind of music are you operating on? All that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess I sort of I moved with from era 1 to 2 and 3, and then into some weirdness, ambient stuff, and then a bunch of reissues. And I found stuff in between that I just gave it a symbol, like the Methuselah shaped picture disc that was put out by Night of the Vinyl Dead, which was created around the turn of the millennium. So that was kind of that tied sort of the Stargate and they spent the rain together, which is a strange period that nobody knows about. So I feel like these right now is kind of difficult to actually answer. I mean, I'm working on the next record the follow up for Spirit of Rebellion, which is, as you mentioned, the sort of return to kind of a return to my roots,
More or less, yeah.
And then I'm trying to figure out, the direction for the next one for that, which it does seem like it'll be in the same style, but evolved. It's a little early to tell, and then I kind of have like 8 feet right now. I'm standing in a lot of different sort of camps.
Yeah.
Musically, I'm also working on some other stuff, which is basically electronic, industrial, a little bit back to the great Deceiver style of sound. So I never really left that. You know what I mean? I still would make that kind of music as well. So I'm kind of working on all kinds of stuff, and then there's probably enough material laying around on my various hard drives for another 3 or 4 records. It's ridiculous, It's no kinds of states of progress. I mean, some of those things are just little pieces of melody that just kind of triggers ideas. I can't throw it away. I just gotta keep it in storage until I can pick it up and start working on it. So there's a lot of ideas for various kinds of music, and I think it's just this is just the way that I am. You never really quite know what the next record is going to be like. I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet or anything like that. I'm not a musical genius. I just have a lot of fucking ideas.
I think that is very clear from your discography, even if it is usually grouped by eras. Even within the so-called eras, there are no 2 albums that are like exactly the same or follow the exact same kind of influence, let alone between the eras, right?
I think by and large you're right about that. I think there might be a couple of records that are pretty similar, but maybe I think the Åndens med Upprör and Kaiser av en dimension Ukänd, which are like my 94 and 95 records, those are like sister records. I feel like they're pretty similar. But I think that's where it stops. Everything else, it's just always some sort of big change between each record, So I don't know. I mean, maybe that's frustrating to some people because they never quite know what they get. Maybe it's exciting to other people because perhaps they're very, very curious as to what happens next, So, as am I.
And I think that by now, your fans and the ones who have stuck with you are kind of used to it. I don't think there is a Mortiis fan that is now expecting a record completely similar to the last one, right? I think people know better.
That's the logic, That's a great situation for me to be in, once people sort of get used to that, then I can do this sort of, I can do the unexpected without being afraid of losing everybody,
Because everyone is expecting the unexpected, so to speak. So
exactly.
That's a great freedom to have as an artist, I think.
It only took me about 30 years. I took a lot of crap in the past for like doing stuff that nobody expected, But I mean, a lot of people stuck around, and now I guess we finally sort of found the flow and the feel, for it. So it's just moving forward now.
And all of those ideas that you have, will they all fall under the banner of Mortiis, or do you have other projects or anything else that might be in the pipeline outside of that world?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I did work on a lot of music just as the pandemic started, from spring last year, which was... I took a lot of that out of like some really old ideas, and I turned it into a rather different thing, which is and this is based around a side project that I am having with Stefan Groth, from Apophthegma Berserk, and it's very much inspired by what is known as Berlin School, which is sort of like the old Tangerine Dream and the Klaus the sort of electronic music pioneers.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Which is the type of music I've been into like for a long, long time, that inspired me to start with Mortiis in the first place. Yeah. And that's very much different from what Mortiis sounds like. So that's a thing that's been going on the side, and I've created, I guess, like an hour or a little bit more than that of music for that. And Sarah Diva, Sarah Jezebel Diva, I remember from the old Stargate and the Smell of Rain.
Of course.
Yeah, she's involved with that now. She's putting vocals on some of the songs. So that's a really cool and interesting project. I don't know when it's going to be done. It's still, in progress, of course, but it's shaping up to sound really cool.
That's great. Very good news.
Yeah.
Of course, you have also been appearing, for all those who follow social media and whatnot, you have also been appearing on the rehearsals of a certain band that you were in around 30 years ago. You are going to make a special appearance on the Emperor live stream that is coming up. So how has that been to get those four people back together in the same room? That hadn't happened in quite a while. How was the feeling of being there, and what happened in there between the four of you?
I mean, not a lot happened. We spent more time just sort of like talking about old days, than we actually did rehearsing. Because, like you said, we hadn't actually been in the same room for a long, long time, since the fall or the winter of 1992, I think was the last time, so we're talking 29 years, So there was a lot of catching up, and we rehearsed, a few songs, and that went well. That was the first time for me to actually be in a rehearsal room since that time, playing the bass. I hadn't picked that up in a long time. I fiddled around with the bass guitar a couple of years after the Emperor thing ended for me, but it was nothing serious. Mm-hmm. So, it was, I mean, I gotta admit, I was a little bit nervous about it, because I didn't know if I was going to suck or not. I've been practicing for a couple of months now, but it's pretty much just been me practicing to music coming out of a laptop. That was all that was the only access to the music that I had. And then we went over to, where they live is about three or 4 hours from here. Uh-huh. So I drove outside of Oslo, which is where Faust lives, and I picked him up, and then we went over to Notodden, my old hometown, which is the general area where Ishan and Seamoth also lives. And then we drove out to their place, the rehearsal room, and it worked. Yeah, it worked well. I mean, I was a little, like I said, I was a little nervous. I thought the first couple of songs I kind of messed up a little bit, and then I got into it, and it was all good.
That's great. Did it make you want to maybe pursue the bass playing again? Was it just like riding an old bike, and now you want to get on the bike a few more times, or was it just nostalgia kind of thing?
I guess it's a little bit like riding a bike, you get used to it. And that was the whole thing. I'm not saying I'm a great bass player. I never was. But, I mean, I did handle the Emperor songs. Like, I could play those,
That's something. That's something already.
Yeah. But it wasn't the technical band that they later became.
Of course,
you have to remember the earlier was much more primitive. But, the thing to get more used to than actually learning the songs was the feeling of having a bass guitar hanging around your neck. That was actually weirder. That took longer to get used to. Because mainly my experience as a musician is being in the studio and just programming and working on stuff, and then being on stage as a lead vocalist, which I did for many, many years.
Yeah.
And that came very natural to me. That was very easy, I felt. Much easier than actually playing an instrument. So it took a little bit of getting used to, but I feel like I'm getting there. Well, I mean, ask me again after I do the special appearance, in a couple of weeks, and then if that turns into a total disaster, I'm not going to feel very motivated, I guess, but probably won't. I think it's going to be fine, and we'll just have to see after that. As of right now, my agenda is to just do the show, and that's about it. I'm sure it's going to go great, and if it inspires you to do something, then better still. So let's wait for it, and I'm sure it will be. I mean, just for people who might not have been around when the time
the beginnings of the band when that lineup was together. I think it'll just be a great feeling for fans of the band and of Mortiis and everything to just see those people together playing. I think it's just a cool thing, even if it's not picture perfect, which I'm sure it will be very close to anyway. But still, I think people are not expecting some kind of mathematical thing. It's just for the feeling, I guess.
That was the spirit of what we were doing back in those days. It was never about being like a great player. It was about the spirit of black metal,
exactly.
And that type of thing back in those days. So hopefully we can recreate that for a few minutes.
Yeah. I'm sure you will. I will surely be watching and cheering you guys along.
Cheering us on.
Yes. Okay, so speaking of the old spirit of black metal and moving straight on to your 10 picks, your first 10 pick is none other than Venom. You picked the song in Nomine Satanas, which I believe appeared for the first time on the side B of the Bloodlust single, their second single. So a very old song from 1982, thereabouts. So this was the beginning of a lot of things, wasn't it?
Yeah, I would say that it was. It wasn't the first Venom song I ever heard. I think the first Venom song I ever heard was In League with Satan, and that one obviously remains one of my easily top 5, I think, favorite Venom songs. But to me, there was something fantastically, insanely cool about the Bloodlust single because It captured the perfect Venom atmosphere, which was almost captured on Welcome to Hell, and almost captured on Black Metal, and perfectly captured on the Bloodlust single. It was just something about the sound and the vibe of that single. Both those songs, Bloodlust and Nomine Satanas, they're absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And I think what makes it very nostalgic for me was the fact that I went on vacation with my parents to Gothenburg in 1986, I believe. Maybe 1987. I was 11 or 12 years old, and we happened to we were walking around the city, and I noticed this record store down in this basement, and I made my parents take me down there because I was like fucking 11, And it was just filled with these like long-haired fucking dudes, and there was all this fucking cool vinyl just all over the walls. I remember there was like a lot of these Wasp singles. I was a huge Wasp fan, of course. When you're 11, you love Wasp and Kiss.
You're attracted to that flashy kind of thing,
Yeah, but I was also into Venom and stuff like that, and I saw all these singles with Venom.
Right.
So I was able to buy Bloodlust single, and I think Die Hard, and probably Warhead, and whatever had come out by that point, I guess I was able to buy down that store, and I spent all my fucking money down there. So I had these really nice nostalgic memories of just sort of falling into this like really obscure, strange cave of a fucking record store, in Gothenburg, completely unexpected, and you just score these fantastic fucking singles that I could never hope to find back in Norway, because Norway was very closed off back in those days. We didn't get a lot of shows or anything, and Sweden got everything. There was a huge hard rock and heavy metal scene in Sweden in the 80s. Just look at all the music that came out of there. So
true.
So that was magical. It's got a great sort of nostalgic vibe for me as well.
Yeah. And it first of all, what a find to find that shop when you didn't even know it, and to find all those precious treasures in there. That was money very well spent, I can imagine.
And those were back in days when you probably only paid like €5 for a single. And that was like an import, you know what I mean? So it was probably expensive, but good luck finding a lot of that stuff for that price today. That's never going to happen.
That's never going to happen,
No.
You probably hold a little fortune in those records from those days.
I still have some of those things. I think they're the same copies. They just never left the house.
And then Venom themselves were very important, instrumental even in that Norwegian black metal scene that formed a few years after.
I think there were... strangely, even back then, you could run into people that didn't quite understand Venom, because even at that point they were considered fairly old. And when you look back, in 1992, 91, 92, when we started out, getting more extreme, Welcome to Hell was barely 10 years old.
Yeah.
That's fucking nothing. I mean, you look back 10 years ago now, that's 2011. that feels very, very recent. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, but obviously, we were 30 years younger, so life seemed slower. Time moves slower when you're younger, strangely enough.
Yeah.
And when you get older,
that is very true. That is very true. And you had the benefit of extreme music itself was just that old, because I imagine extreme music, really extreme music, starts, I guess, with the passage of Motorhead to Venom and Slayer and those things. That's, I guess,
those guys started out. I mean, they kind of were the only ones out there, and then it kind of moved on to that sort of crazy, the grindcore scene from the mid '80s, with Napalm Death and those extremely fast bands, So stuff happened fast, but for some reason it felt slow. I don't know why that is, but thinking back, it just felt like everything was moving in slow motion.
I think that's an effect of being young, because I feel the same way.
Yeah, you're always waiting for something, So I guess that was what made things go slow.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so let's begin this journey into 80s classic and extreme and somehow underrated also in a few tracks that are coming, metal, with Venom, of course, the start of so many things. In Nomine Satanas, let's listen to it, and we will return after that with more songs picked by Mortiis.
Of 80s, we will outlive our own. With the power of our fire, we will gather our strength. With the blood of the other mortals, our thirst will be quenched. In the name of Satan, great things can be done. With all the demons, Satan's songs for sons. Now alone my legions, for in time you will see what a screaming for mercy without again. Well, what a Satanas, your separate of something. We'll take what we need. Robin Hood of nations. Let your heart lead to disaster. So we brave our hate. Our born Satan's casualties. You was our fate. As Satan sings his songs of war, as I see mortal corpses rise up from the dead, I cannot go on. I will destroy the priests, bound in chains and damned in hell. I will build his soul. The infernal torments blazing, splatter demons of night.
All right, we are back. That was Venom, a perfect start, and we will now have the perfect continuation to that with yet another classic. We were just talking about how you need to have a few classics, to kind of ground these lists. A few more hidden and lost gems will come just in a while, but for now let's continue on the Immortals with Pentagram. So, Havard, you picked Sign of the Wolf from Pentagram, so talk to me about that one.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Pentagram is they got so many great songs that it's almost like just put on a blindfold and just point your finger at something and it'll be a great song.
It'll be
by
good.
Pentagram.
Yeah, for sure.
That one, Sign of the Wolf, I think. I don't have the list in front of me now, and I've been working on something else all day, so I kind of forgot the list, but I think it's a Sign of the Wolf.
It is, yes. Sign of the Wolf, yeah.
Really fucking great song. And, I mean, honestly, I think if that record, I believe it's from their first album.
Yes.
And unless I'm mistaken, I think they were actually called Death Row around that time, and because of member changes between Pentagram and Death Row. I'm not quite certain because it's kind of a confusing band story sometimes.
It is, yeah. I think they changed from Death Row to Pentagram a year or two before this first album, but then there was that whole thing with the album being reissued a few years later as Relentless, and it was pretty much the same album. So yeah, those first few years are a confusion with this band.
Exactly. And I think actually the reissue, which was put out by Peaceville, is not the same mix, and it might not be the same order of songs. So it just gets more and more confusing, and I tried to figure it out, and my head just hurts, But
you're better off just listening to the songs, and because I think on the first Pentagram, Sign of the Wolf is the second song, and on Relentless, the reissue, it's the third song, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have stuff in front of me, but I think that's it. But anyway, yes, go on.
and the crazy thing is, I have both versions. I have the original Pentagram album, obviously, because I'm a record collector, and it cost me an arm and a leg, but now I have it, and I got it a couple of years ago. And of course, I have the Peaceville. I think I've had that almost since it came out back in the 90s. And that is actually how I heard about it, because I had my own little fanzine, back. This is actually pre-Emperor days, probably by 1990, 91, maybe 92. Maybe I had just joined the same as Nishan and started Emperor when I was still running my fanzine, and I did get this. Sometimes labels would send you promo cassettes, because that was still happening back in those days. This was before CD, and they didn't necessarily send out vinyls and stuff to small magazines, so they would send out cassettes. And I remember Peaceful sent me a compilation cassette. And it had a bunch of cool stuff on it, and then there was this band called Pentagram, and that's a very black metal-y name, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, or at least I thought so. I didn't realize this was a band from way back in the 70s. When you could also call it band Pentagram then. It's not there's a law against it. So I was really surprised when I heard the music. And it took me a while to get into it, to be honest, because, in 92, I was a very extreme person. I mean, I only accepted anything that, dark and hard and fast music. So, all of a sudden you hear this, it's basically a hard rock band, isn't it?
Pretty much,
with fairly dark lyrics. So that took me a while, but I never forgot them. So just exactly the same way I felt when I heard Nine Inch Nails in 1990. I saw the video, it had a hole, and I didn't understand it, but I never fucking forgot it. And years later, I became a huge fan. Same thing with Pentagram. It left a lasting impression, even though I didn't quite understand it.
Exactly. Even if you weren't ready then to fully understand it, it stayed there. And
it absolutely did. And been a big fan of that band for a long time now, and I got some really strange records with them that you really can't get anywhere else. I guess a few of them are bootlegs, and I was able to track down some of these strange compilation records from before, Relapse and those guys sort of got the band back.
Yeah.
And finally gave those guys a career, I guess, which had taken a long time for that to happen.
Yeah, they were able to tour in Europe and everything, 30 years after the fact, pretty much.
Yeah. But I mean, there's been some pretty heavy drug abuse, with Bobby. So, I saw the documentary, and clearly he was in no shape to go on tour for a long time.
Absolutely not. Yeah, that documentary.
I'm very happy to see him get better.
Yeah.
Were
you also? Did you also become into some of these other bands of this sort of scene, Saint Vitus or Trouble or Black Sabbath themselves, kind of thing?
Oh yeah, I got into Black Sabbath. I mean, probably at the same time. I mean, probably a little earlier than Pentagram. Black Sabbath I've known about since I was born, but for a long time, I mean, I kind of lumped them into the same category as Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin, Uriah Heep, and all the 70s bands, Nazareth and all that stuff. And I love all those bands now, obviously, and I have done for a long time, but you associate that with your dad, and his weird friends.
The oldies,
and basically I'm older than he was when I thought he was lame now.
Right.
if you know what I mean. But by the early 90s, I was starting to warm up to Black Sabbath, and I started listening to the Master of Reality album, which I think is absolutely fucking phenomenal record. But Sweet Leaf and all those really fucking awesome songs that you have there, Lord of the Void, things like that. But it's impossible to find a favorite album by Black Sabbath from the 70s. At least the 6 first ones. They're all masterpieces, basically.
And,
I was into Trouble, Saint Vitus, obviously. And there's an awesome band called The Obsessed. With Wino, he used to sing with. He's been kind of in and out of Saint Vitus as a singer. He's a pretty legendary person himself.
I am curious, you being a fan of Venom and Pentagram and all these bands that we have been talking about, but you never exactly attempted to do music remotely close to this. Nothing very classic ever came from you. Have you felt like it at any point?
I've thought about how cool it must be to play music like that, to make that kind of music and be able to write those kinds of songs. And quite frankly, I just don't think I have that in me. Right. I'm a huge fan of it, and I think I'll just leave it at that, because that gives me the freedom to not analyze the music when I listen to it.
Right.
When I listen to something that is more closely related to what I've done, like more electronic based or the hybrid sort of metal, industrial type of stuff, I just end up sitting there trying to figure out how they created these sounds, because it's very sonically based, a lot of that stuff, samples and layers and experimentation. So that kills the magic a little bit. That's kind of sad, but it's just the nature of the beast as far as I go. That's just the way my brain works.
And you're not the first musician to tell me something like that. So that absolutely makes sense. You start when it's something close to what you do, you just can't listen to it as a fan anymore. You just pick it apart in your head as you're listening to it. So.
Yeah, you become this sort of technician. Listen to it like, well, I wonder how he did that. That motherfucker. How the fuck did he manage that? And then my day is ruined because I'm jealous and I get pissed off.
So better leave that alone. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, that never happens when I listen to Bathory or Hellhammer.
Exactly,
I just go like, fuck, I love this stuff. And that's it. That's all there's to it. I don't want there to be any more than that.
Yeah.
I want to be that fucking 14-year-old kid that I was once. Back in the day, just fucking loving the music, and that's where it stops.
Keeping that magic alive. That is very important. Okay, so let's keep the magic alive with Pentagram. So here is Sign of the Wolf. Try not to pick it apart, everyone who plays music like this.
the love from above, but it's happening to me. Black cloud hangs and it just won't leave, though he wants to believe it's a pentagram. Hard to conceive and he tries to perceive, though he's destined to grieve. It's a pentagram. Now don't know how, but it's happening to me. Got the love from above, but it's happening to me. Yeah. I can't turn back now. Stories unfold, but they've all been told when he sold his soul to the pentagram. And to end his life, though the silver is old, he will reach his goal by the pentagram. And now don't know how, but it's happening to me. Got the love from above, but it's happening to me. Yeah. Tell me one more time. Now don't know how, but it's happening to me. Got the love from above, but it's happening to me. Yeah. It's alright. I can't turn back now. It's a sign of the wolf.
The Devil's Mouth. And here we are again. So after two timeless classics, here is the first treasure to be dug up by Mortiis on this episode. We are talking about a German band that existed rather briefly for a couple of spells in the 70s and then until 1986 when they apparently split up for good. A band called The Hand of Doom. So, Havard, you picked from their only record, called Poisonoise, the song They Who Will Creep at Night. So I'm sure a lot of people who listening are now scratching their heads and going, who? So enlighten them, please.
Well, there's not a lot to say. I mean, I think you pretty much said it all.
My intro ruined everything.
Yeah, you just read the whole band biography, I think.
It's not big, to be honest.
Seconds.
Yeah.
I discovered them, I guess, maybe 2 years ago, believe it or not, and they were just very, very obscure. And I think the way that I discovered them was through some kind of you got some of these sort of collectors websites online, where people discuss really obscure music and then it is sort of linked to the next even more obscure band, and that I think was how I just discovered this reference to a band called Hand of Doom. And once you hear the name, you could always go on Discogs or somewhere like that, and you can usually track him down. And then you sit down and wonder, like, how the fuck did I not know about this before? Yeah. And I do this a lot. I mean, I'll go on YouTube and just kind of like search around and just link to a link, and you kind of go digging for gold, And so this band shows up, and they put a record out, I think, in 1979 called Poisonoise. And
exactly.
I think all of those songs are great. They're really catchy, slightly doomy, sort of like dirty hard rock.
Yeah.
definitely not professional at all, but it has a lot of attitude to it. It's played with this sort of fuck you attitude. Almost sounds like I'm describing a punk record, but it's not punk, even though I think the spirit is kind of punky with what they're doing.
Exactly. The vibe of it is very punk, very DIY even. I think they even put out the record themselves from what I've seen. So, there was a lot of that attitude present. And
they kind of look like young bikers.
More or less,
There's a band photo on the cover. They kind of look like the kind of people that would beat you up in the pub.
Exactly, yeah. Like the leather jackets, they look a bit rugged. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the music is really cool. I mean, it's some kind of hard rock, like sort of mid-paced hard rock, kind of heavy, kind of dark.
Yeah.
And by the looks of it, they seem to, I don't know, that lyrically it seems to be a little bit on the dark side as well. Not that that's important, but just everything seems to be slightly dark with these guys.
Yeah. It's more gloomy than the music itself indicates, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And just damn great songs. All of those 10 songs. It's one of those bands that you wonder, why didn't they do more stuff? Or at least after the band ended, why didn't these people do more stuff? Because there isn't much record of them doing anything, any of them. So.
I think the singer went on to do a bunch of weird stuff. Experimental, there's just like a bunch of cassette releases.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. I didn't quite catch what exactly he did after that, but there's something.
The band is on Metal Archives, by the way, for everyone who is interested in exploring a bit further. Yeah, they have two former vocalists, Helmut Bodes, who was apparently kicked out of the band really early. He has a whole bunch of ex-bands to his name, and they're all bands that I don't know. And then the other vocalist, who I think was the one who recorded the record, Andreas Igi Rusner, he also has bands called Generator and Different Clones and Formic Acid, all bands that I honestly don't know, so they might have...
I think that's the guy that I was thinking about.
Yeah, that's probably.
I don't know if it's like experimental electronic music or if it's just weird punky shit. I mean, who knows, man? I mean,
who knows?
I'm gonna investigate that at some point.
Yeah. It's probably their background or foreground in this case probably deserves a bit more of digging, even if it's very different. But yes, I think for now, The Hand of Doom is already a really great discovery for anyone who doesn't know them, and if you already know them, kudos, and it's always good remembering because they are damn great songs.
And High Roller, I think, reissued Poisonoise, so you can actually get that. I think is sold out. I have the original pressing, actually. Another very expensive record, by the way. Not to brag,
I can imagine. I haven't gone on Discogs, but I can imagine how much that will be for these days.
Yeah, it's a bit of a. You got to dig deep. But I think it's worth it. I mean, if you're into the record collecting, it's a very, very cool record to own. But you don't have to pay a fortune for it because High Roller, the German label, put this out a few years back. So.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that there had been a reissue, so that's cool. If you're not an obsessive record collector, you can just get the music and be done.
Exactly.
So but this is the kind of thing that record collectors live for, right? That obscure band that had that record from the 70s. This is the whole one of the holy grails of it is these kind of bands, isn't it?
There's a lot of holy grails, but it's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, so let's listen to them and get everyone more excited than they probably are, everyone who doesn't know them, by all this description and all this talk. So here's music. The Hand of Doom with They Who Will Creep at Night. here we are. That was The Hand of Doom. We hope you enjoyed that little treasure. And now Howard is roaring to go to talk about Razor, aren't you?
Yeah, I was. I started a little early. I had to wait for the.
He actually jumped the gun when we were still off the record. That's how excited he is to bring the classic evil invaders to the masses.
Cannot fucking wait. No, the thing with Razor was. Evil Invaders is actually quite a bit of a. I feel like it's a different song than what they'd usually made back in those days. I mean, Razor were a fairly fast sort of. I think they were described as a thrash metal band back then. But to me, thrash metal is stuff like Nuclear Assault and Anthrax. I never felt like Razor sounded like that.
To me, I think they're much more representative of that sort of elusive genre that was known as speed metal. I think this is what you would put on, not this song, but this band in general is what you would put on to explain the difference between speed and thrash. But you're right, this song is quite different for them at this time.
Yeah, that's what I felt. I mean, I was never quite sure how to categorize Razor. I mean, like some sort of heavy metal, speed metal type of hybrid or something like that. But, I kind of hate the whole sort of category war, like people get all into arguments about what category you put stuff in. I mean, but the thing about that song, Evil Invaders, is this slow, sort of pounding, fucking really catchy song. And once again, I feel like it should have made the band bigger. That song is absolutely up there with anything that Venom or Destruction or Celtic Frost ever made, I feel, So, I don't know. They kind of remained this. They were very well known. I think everybody knew who they were back in the 80s. They just never really got that big. Maybe because they were from Canada, which is kind of distant,
Yeah.
If you're from Europe, ideally you should be from Germany, that would be great because you can tour all over. Or the States, which is another big country. And, the Canada, I guess, was really just a couple of cities, even though it's a huge country,
Yeah.
So who knows about that? But it was a song, I probably heard that when that was the first Razor song I ever heard. And I lost my mind. It was so heavy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Evil Invaders, like, what's that about? You're 12 years old and like, that's fucking...
That's exactly what you want at that age, isn't it?
Well, that was my age when I discovered heavier music. That was heavier than Wasp. That was heavier than Kiss. All of a sudden, there's a band called Venom. There's a band called Dark Angel and Bathory and Possessed. And because I discovered these compilation albums called Speed Kills.
Ah, yes.
Remember those?
Yeah. They were the starting point for a lot of people to get into those bands. Yeah, very much.
And that was the gateway, man, to that absolutely crazy world of thrash and speed and black metal,
Yeah.
So that's how you discover Sodom and Bulldozer and Dark Angel,
absolutely.
Possessed, and even Death, actually, I think was on the third one.
Yeah.
Which, Death were just beyond fucking crazy, because that was proper death metal, and that was another new project, new genre that I wasn't even aware of at the time.
Yeah.
But, anyway, Razor, I believe, was on one of those records, and that's how I got into those guys. I think the vocalist was his nickname, I think, was Sheepdog, or something like that, maybe because of his hairdo or something like that. And but his voice was just inhuman.
Yeah,
it sounded like he twisted the vocal cords like 8 times. So I was sold, man.
And Sheepdog is now 56 years old, and he's bald, if you want to feel really old. So, the sheepdog has been shaved.
Well, fuck, it happens, man. I mean,
it happens to all of us.
Thankfully, it's not happening to me, but I have too much hair.
It is part of your trademark as well, those big locks. But I think it's a testament to the band that so many years have gone by, but this song, if you put it on today, it will have the same impact on the today 15-year-old who is into thrash and all that kind of thing. If he doesn't know this song, it will work on him in the exact same way that it worked on us when we were kids. So I think that's the power of those songs from the best bands and the best songs from that age. They remain timeless. So that's
1985, man.
Yeah. very good year. And you were right also about Canada. That might have been a factor on why they didn't get huge, because they certainly did a whole bunch of records. But with Canada, either you're super weird and groundbreaking, like Voivod, for example, or Gorguts, and you become a leader in your genre just because no one else sounds like you. If you're a more, let's call it, common band, not necessarily in a bad way, but, a band that's more conformed to a genre, like Razor, for example, it's harder for Canadian bands. And when I say Canadian, I mean any non-German European country, a Portuguese band, a Greek band, it's more difficult, I suppose.
It would have been interesting to see if you put all those bands, even Voivod, I thought deserved to be bigger. I mean, they were released by all the right labels, Noise Records and what were they on, like Combat or something like that in the States, all the sort of big ones for that music back in those States, and still and hugely respected. I mean, I'm talking about Voivod now, and Razor, you could say the same thing, but Voivod, you kind of feel like they should have been a bigger band too,
Absolutely.
Everybody loved fucking Voivod, and for some reason, maybe they were just too strange.
Yeah, I think right now, I think they are super respected in the headline festivals and stuff, but it took them a while to get there, much more than if they had been on another market, I agree, yeah.
And they had some of the absolute best artwork for their time, too.
Oh, that is true.
Which Away, I think, was the guy behind the drummer, was drawing or painting all of it.
Yeah, his art book is just, he's amazing. His art book is one of the best items that you can get of that kind. His art book is amazing.
He has an art book?
He does. I heartily recommend it. The Art of Away, I think that's how it's called. It's one of my very prized possessions. I think you can still get it. I think it's not cheap, but I think it's still available. So
I'll Google that.
Yeah,
check it out.
You do. So Razor with Evil Invaders. And here we are. That was Razor, and we were just talking about bands from Germany, so that's what the doctor ordered, the Dr. Mortiis in this case. You picked Rulers Must Come from their second album, Metal Revolution, 1985 again. That was quite a year. So, Håvard, talk to
time.
me. Absolutely, yeah. Living Death, despite being from Germany, also a bit underrated and not as celebrated as they probably should also these days, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, the thing about Living Death and that song was, they were a thrash speed metal band, heavy metal. Who the fuck knows?
Yeah, one of them
that I heard quite early on as a kid. And that was the song that I heard. That was the first Living Death song I ever heard, and I thought, this is a catchy, interesting band that I never heard about, And so I started checking them out, and I never thought that they really lived up to that song. Maybe it's because it was the first one I heard, and so you developed a sort of special relationship with that song.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was a really well-written song. It's very catchy. Seems to have decent lyrical content. Not that really matters that much to me, to be honest. But and it's one of those where I forget what the singer is called, but he's got kind of a very
Toto. His nickname was Toto. So yeah.
Toto. Yeah, he looks like he should be in the band Toto. I remember he had short hair and the mustache.
True.
So he looks like.
Yeah.
That's probably got nothing to do with his nickname, but it kind of looks like he should be in like one of those like American radio rock bands from like the late 70s, early 80s, like Toto or Boston or something.
He does. He does.
Yeah, well, except for this sort of zebra striped spandex pants, that Living Death really, they had a great fucking image.
They did. It was really crazy.
It's kind of like they invented that sort of German speed metal look, with the sort of lycra pants and
right.
the striped pants and the sort of Freddy Krueger shirts and all that stuff. Quite a lot of spikes and bullet belts and things like that. And they did that like in '82. They were very early.
Exactly.
Actually, they were earlier than most of the other German sort of heavy metal thrash bands. Like Destruction and Sodom and things like that. Who started coming out with their
very pioneering. I'm sure we will get some nerd in the comments going like, actually, there was a band in 1981 but still, notwithstanding, they were absolutely pioneering.
There probably was.
There probably was, but still, they were very pioneering. Even if they might not have been the absolute first, they were very pioneering for sure. Yeah.
Well, they were very early, and I'm not exactly sure when their first album. I think '83 was probably when their first LP came out.
84, I think. 83 was the demo, and 84 was the record. Vengeance of Hell is from 84, I think.
Was it recorded in '83?
Probably, yeah.
I just thought they were, but maybe, at least they had like a full-length album in '84, which is more than you can say for Sodom and Destruction.
Exactly,
they had their first was in '85. But, they had many LPs out in '84. If we're going to get really nerdy about it, Of course, there's Running Wild, which were pretty much out there at the same time. I think they had their first LP out in '84.
Yeah, but it was this first back between '82 and '84. If you were there, you can be safely called pioneering, I think.
Well, exactly. And anyway, I thought the song was very catchy, and I think I still to this day I play that song, and I still feel like it irritates me that I don't think the rest of their output was quite as good.
Right. Yeah.
I think that it put out a lot of cool shit, but that song just kind of stands head and shoulders, I feel like, above the rest of the stuff that they put out. A lot of people might probably disagree. I know a lot of people like the Protected from Reality album and World Neurosis. A lot of people are really into. I never quite got that one, but then again, I mean, I like simpler stuff, I guess, just easy listening. So
I'm a bigger fan of the first two albums myself.
And once again, really cool artwork for being so old.
Very much so.
And underground, that the artwork is very fucking really nice, actually.
It is. The power of the song that you discover a band with, or sometimes even the album that you discover a band with, that has a lot of power too. That influences the way you relate to that song or that album forever.
Yeah, for better or worse. I think that's true.
Yeah. Do you have a record that most of your nerdy fans go up and talk to you about? Is it Född till Ahärska, maybe, or the Stargate? Is there one of those that sticks out more when people talk to you, like at shows or something?
It kind of, again, it depends a little bit on the era thing, but a lot of people talk about The Smell of Rain.
Smell of Rain, right, yeah.
And then obviously a lot of people talk about the first one, Född till Ahärska, which I guess it makes sense because The Smell of Rain was the first album I made that was more of in the more traditional, songwriting sense, and me as a vocalist and all that stuff. And Född till Ahärska was simply my first album ever.
Yeah.
So those two, I think, are. Yeah, they do kind of get repeated a lot when people want to talk about my records.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right, so let's listen to that song that stands head and shoulders above all other Living Death songs. Rulers Must Come, and that is the end of side A of your choices. Those were the first 5, so we still have 5 more after this one. Devil's Mouth. And here we are. It's the start of the second half of Howard's list. And we start by, he already said it, he revealed it, Amebix. We go on a more crust punk kind of direction, but always a very metallic crust punk direction that Amebix had back in the 80s. So the choice of song was Largactyl, one of their most emblematic songs from the Arise album, of course. So was this one of your first forays into the punkier side of things back in the day?
I think, well, actually, not really. But it was one of the more interesting things I feel like I discovered quite a long time ago now. But I guess the first was like everybody else, probably Sex Pistols, something like that, because they were so controversial. So you heard about them from the minute I was able to read. I mean, you would register the Sex Pistols, in some kind of conversation. But yeah, I mean, Amebix, I'm trying to remember how I actually discovered them, and it's just like the band, it is a bit sort of mired in fog, It's a little, to me, Amebix is, maybe it's just the whole vibe of the band, the logo and the artwork, everything seems very mysterious and far away and strange. Almost the same way I feel about early Voivod. For some reason, I always think about early Voivod and Amebix at the same time for some fucking weird reason. Okay. Probably something to do with the vibe around the band.
I can see
but
that.
They just, it's hard to know a whole lot about them because I believe they were house squatters back in the days, and they never had any real commercial success. They were just churning out this extremely dirty, grimy, lo-fi, crusty punk, which is obviously why they're mainly known as a crust punk band. I think there's a faint Motorhead vibe with these guys sometimes. Like if Lemmy didn't know how to play.
I like that description.
Was really angry with society and had occult interests or something, then you would get Amebix.
Lemmy without the girls. Lemmy without the whiskey and without the girls, who would probably have turned into this.
Maybe they had girls. Who knows what happened?
That is true. Yeah.
Hey, I'm in Amebix. That might have been a great pickup line back in 1985 or 86.
You never
or even
know.
Before that.
Yeah. No, but I get that. There was that sort of even occult, I would call it, not with the weight that word has gained nowadays, even to describe bands, but they felt occult. They felt that there was something a little weird and mystical about them.
Well, that's what I mean. It was thinking about the Moors and strange monoliths and things like that. So it's very mysterious. And even the way that they looked, which they had this very spiky, dyed hair black, they almost looked like Skinny Puppy back in the days. True,
yeah.
Which I find it very fascinating. I like that kind of look, It's just complete opposite of anything that's accepted in society,
Yeah.
So that's great. So it's got all these elements that is like, and like I said, the music is just very lo-fi and kind of fuck you, but in this cool mid-tempo, grimy kind of way.
Exactly. Yeah.
So obviously that's going to appeal to me.
Yeah. Since you mentioned Skinny Puppy, we already touched briefly upon this, so I think it might have been that. But you didn't necessarily pick any bands that sound remotely like your own music, so I'm sure you have some influences from that side, but is it that effect of being less able to listen to them as a fan that led you to pick a more metallic sort of playlist for this?
Well, yeah. I don't know if we discussed this on record or if we did this privately earlier on. We did talk about it, where the whole conversation.
I think we were on record, but if we weren't, dear listeners, we talked about this, so don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. It's just hard to list for me to listen to stuff like Skinny Puppy or even Nine Inch Nails or Enigma and all those Ministry, all those bands that I really like and that are closer in nature to the kind of music that I do. without just picking it apart, and analyzing it and trying to find out how did he make that? That's a great sound. I wonder how he did that. And so you dissect the music and you forget how to listen to it as just a fan. Just enjoy it. You no longer enjoy it in the same way. It's like I said, you become this sort of technician trying to figure out how it was done.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't do that with metal and punk and the stuff that's typical of what is on the list that we're talking about right now. That I can just listen to as a fan, because I don't care how they did it. It just sounds fucking awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so fucking awesome is also a good way to describe these first Amebix songs. So here is Largactyl from Arise, and we will be back after that with a bit more punk, actually. So hang in there.
Down in the city, thinking about your life and your bottle of pills. They release you from the hospital. You're cured. So this is how freedom feels. Largactyl. 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 Largactyl! Relax! Don't be paranoid! Relax! Don't be paranoid! Relax! Don't be paranoid! Relax! Don't be Feel a little numb, feel a little tired, your brain's asleep, and your body's returned. You've learned to fit in, open. You're just a shadow of what used to be. Largactyl! 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 Relax! It's only paranoia! Relax! It's only paranoia! Relax! It's only paranoia! It's only paranoia!
It's time to get who I am, yeah? Sometimes I forget who I am. It's like another part of it's trying to take me over. Sometimes I can't sleep at night because the voices in my head. I know it's only my own paranoia, but I just can't help myself anymore. I just don't know what to do. It's going hard to fit.
I come to my life. I'm carried away. It's only a dream, but it's fucking obscene. You've learned to fit in and vegetable. Vanilla at 21. They'll be coming for you. Largactyl! 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 Let's see the fucking light. Relax! It's only paranoia. Relax! It's only paranoia. Relax! It's only paranoia. Relax! It's only
All right, we are back. That was Amebix, and we will remain on the punkier, hardcore even side of things with Grievous Body Harm. G.B.H. with the song Time Bomb from their wonderfully titled album. I love it. City Baby Attacked by Rats. It's an album, again, from that magical time of the early 80s, 1982. To be this heavy and this extreme, I would say, without even being a metal band in 1982 was quite something, wasn't it?
It's absolutely insane. And, I feel like the guitar sound they had on that record is... It should probably be every black metal guitarist's dream.
True. Yes. Yes.
It literally is like, well, not literally because it's not a chainsaw. It's virtually a chainsaw.
Yeah.
It's just the closest thing ever. It's maybe some ministry stuff that came later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really angry stuff. And they're good songwriters too. And it's just tight enough to still be this kind of, slightly loose, shaky, but angry as fuck type, punk from the early days of punk. Or the early days of, I don't even know, like the anarcho-punk or whatever the fuck it was called.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about that is if you read some of those old sort of Bathory biographies and interviews with Quorthon, he was very inspired by G.B.H.
Exactly, yeah. I was going to ask you about that because he actually was there at the genesis of black metal as we know it. These bands, and G.B.H. were one of them, were there, right? As influences, yeah.
They were there, they were there ahead of it, I think G.B.H. in 1982 were way more aggressive than Venom ever was. And not that I don't think Venom ever strived. I'm not going to line them up against each other, but it's just as a sort of a measuring pole,
Right. Yeah.
Venom, I don't think, like I said, I don't think they tried to be aggressive. They were just Venom,
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think a lot of people probably thought and still think that in 1981 that the hardest thing in the world must have been Venom, and that's not true. It was probably G.B.H. or Discharge or something like that,
Exactly. You put on in Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing by Discharge, and it's a kick in the ass, that record. That is...
Yeah, I was considering that one too, but, at the end of the day, I think I actually I like G.B.H. just like an inch more, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not sure why. It's just well, that's my taste this week. Anyway.
Now, G.B.H. are probably a bit more musical. Discharge were more of the repetition, really grey sort of thing. G.B.H. have more songs to speak of, I think.
Maybe that's why I like it, because I'm a big song guy,
Right, yeah.
And also, like you said, that the title is so dark. I mean, I have kids, so I really kind of feel it when I see the cover. With that sort of stroller, the baby wagon, so to speak, with rats fucking jumping into it and stuff.
Yeah.
It's dark, it's brutal, and it's probably, it's probably sort of symbol for city life and what it's like to fucking have nothing,
Yeah. And
so,
and when you live in a city, how close you are from the perfect idyllic life to that darkness that is bubbling underneath, right exactly where you live. So yeah, that's a good image.
And then they put out a record a couple years later called City Babe's Revenge, which I think has a cover of probably the same kid, a little older with a knife, and I think slaughtered a few rats.
Yeah. That turned into a whole story.
It's redeeming,
It is, yeah.
But it's a great fucking band, man.
It is.
And I discovered them pretty early on, too, but that was a later album called No Need to Panic, which has that the car on the front.
Yeah.
Which I think is probably not their best album, but once you go back a couple of years, I mean, that band was fucking forceful.
Absolutely. So let us return to almost 40 years in the past to G.B.H. with Time Bomb. We are back, so that was our foray into 80s punk and all the aggression and violence that came with it. And now it's time to dig into that treasure box once more. A band that in their lifetime released a grand total of one single, 2 songs, a 7-inch called Black Ice, from which the title track, however to pull this deep cut. Band called Aragorn, if you can believe that. Band from the new wave of British heavy metal. So another one of those, right? Another record collector's dream that you have here. Amazing band with like one release to their name.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, but there's a lot of those over in the UK. You know, it kind of felt like every village in the UK back in the early 80s produced this obscure yet fantastic band that lasted all of like one single, maybe 2 singles, and then split up. And
exactly. Yeah.
You don't even know what the musicians ever did again. It's like everybody stopped playing their instruments after a single or 2. It's weird.
Yeah.
And that can't be the case. They must have done something after that. I mean, God knows what, you know.
I do wonder what these guys are up to, you know. These guys probably working at a pub or at a factory, or they're accountants. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess there was a lot of that going on in the UK. I mean, there's a lot of these sort of worker towns,
exactly,
you know, I guess. So
Aragorn were from Macclesfield, of all places. So there you go. Yeah.
Right. I thought they were. Is that like outside of Manchester or something? Because I thought they might have been from that area.
Sort of between Manchester and Sheffield, that sort of area. Yes.
Right.
So you are absolutely right. Very close to Stockport. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, the way that I found out about them was rather coincidental, I guess. When I started, because I was a record collector back in, throughout all of the 90s, and then I had a break for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And then I kind of got the bug again probably about 10 years ago. And started collecting pretty much fucking everything. And at one point I decided that I'm going to try to get as many of the Neat Records 7-inches as I can get, because they put out a lot of 7-inches. And so, fairly shortly into that project, I discovered Aragorn, and I got their single. And I love the logo and the cover. Everything's just dark.
Yeah.
And I put the thing on, and I couldn't fucking believe it. I mean, this thing came out in 1981. And once again, and this seems to be a bit of a red thread throughout the whole list, I guess, it's just grimy and dirty and heavy.
Yeah.
With this very contrasting voice. It's got that rather classical new wave of British heavy metal voice, which is a very sort of clear tone, you know.
Yeah.
That kind of goes an octave higher than the music, which seems to be something that, the sort of angel witch, not quite that professional.
Yeah. He sounds even a bit like a sort of a rougher Paul Di'Anno on this one, the singer.
You could say that, like, less polished, because Paul Di'Anno, I think, is a much better singer than maybe he gets credit for. I mean, if you really listen to those Maiden records, he's a fucking great singer.
Yeah.
Very good control.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the first thing I thought was, these guys sound like Venom, maybe before Venom. It's got a little bit of that really dirty
that bite.
Again, I use the same words all the time now, I guess, but you know how Venom sounded like on the first single?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just sloppy, but fucking awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
I felt like Aragorn was a little bit, like, it has this groove to it that I thought was awesome, and very heavy, and then the vocal comes, just the top of that really sort of sticking out, and it reminded me of, actually, do you remember the Italian band Bulldozer?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
They were obviously heavily influenced by Venom, but they kind of, by being that, they sort of sounded like themselves. Bulldozer sounds like Bulldozer to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that, actually, I felt like I heard that in Aragorn, except 4 years before Bulldozer,
That's right, yeah.
So I was very fascinated by that, and I couldn't believe that they only had a single out, but doing a little bit more research, they actually, and this is all written on Discogs now, but it turns out that they recorded an album, apparently, in 1982 or 83,
Yeah.
that was never released. And I think High Roller, because those guys are clearly
They are very
heavy
good
metal
gold
investigators.
diggers. Yeah.
So they really dig shit out, and I think they put that out, as they do. Those guys.
I read that the songs were recovered from a cassette tape that existed. So I think it's 12 or 13 songs that are on the 90s Burning, I think it's called, and that includes this song Black Ice also. And so there is a bit more than these two songs to listen to, but the core of it is this single. This single is absolute magic.
That was when they existed. That was what they were. They were one single, and then I guess an unreleased album later on. And God knows when they split up. Sometimes in the 80s.
Probably not even they know if you can reach them.
We haven't rehearsed for 2 years. Are we still together? No. I stopped playing drums like a year and a half ago, man.
yeah. But I like the bulldozer connection that you made. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean the Day of Wrath is 1985, so exactly 4 years before the first Bulldozer album. So. True pioneers here, completely unsung, very widely unknown. So every listener that is discovering them right now, you're welcome. That was entirely the work of Mortiis to bring this piece of amazing history to you. And so let's listen to it. Everybody pay close attention to Black Ice by Aragorn from 1981. Imagine that.
Come on. Blind eyes just a killer in disguise. One show up on the screen. When you're racing down the road like a fool in a bed. 619. Blind eyes just a hidden danger. Blind ways for the real. Lamp lights coming on the stranger. Wanna live another day. Like ice, yeah.
We are back. That was Aragorn, a great pearl on this list, a rarity. Now we are moving on to a more well-known name, Canadian metal again. That magical time for Canadian speed metal. This time it's Exciter. The choice fell on Violence and Force, the title track from that album from 1984, their second album. So you are a bit of a fan of 80s speed metal, in particular Canadian speed metal, are you not?
It seems like it. You know, it's not necessarily something that you think about it. Like I guess I like this specific genre from.
It's only when you start to put things together that you're like, I have quite a bit of this.
And that makes sense, you know. That your taste is sort of focused on certain things.
Right.
So what was I going to say? I was trying to think of the first time I heard this song, and I think it was around the same time. You know, Exciter was once again was one of those very early discoveries for me as a kid.
Yeah.
And I believe that song was on a sort of a mixtape that was made by an older friend of mine, I was like 12, but he was maybe 17. It was a little weird for a 17-year-old to hang out with a 12-year-old, but he was a guy that I knew through other friends that were like 3 years older than me, and they knew him, and so they were in the middle, and I was on the young end of the spectrum. He was on the older end of the spectrum. We were all like hard rock guys, you know.
That's the thing. Well, I was going to say that usually happened, and it wasn't weird because there was that music connection back then. I remember there being like older guys and younger kids, but if there was that connection between people, it age kind of dissipated a bit.
It was all about the music, you know. And if you read any like hard rock biography by any like big rock star, there's the way they got into the music is always somebody's older brother.
Exactly. There's always an older brother in the story. Exactly.
Yeah, and who had this really awesome record collection, and that's how he got into like fucking, you know, Jimi Hendrix or whatever the fuck, you know, if you're really old, you know. So this guy had made a tape, and I think it made it for someone else, but I borrowed that tape from that person, and it just had all this fucking amazing stuff on it, and Exciter was one of these songs. And I remember that there's just the power of that song, Violence and Force. Yeah. The opening riff, which is so fucking metallic. It almost feels like it's cutting you. I never fucking forgot that. And the fact that, and that's one of the greatest voices of 80s heavy metal, by the way. And once again, I'm shit with names, but the vocalist, who I believe is also the drummer.
Yes, Dan.
That's an insane combination. He's such a fucking great singer. Yeah. And also the drummer. What a rare combo, though. Not that there's anything wrong with that, you know, but it's just like, who ever heard about this fantastic heavy metal singer who's also the drummer.
I'm a great fan of drummer vocalists. It's an unusual spot, and when one appears, they're usually particularly good. So I'm a great fan of that combo. And Dan Bueller. Dan Bueller was his name, and he is amazing, absolutely amazing.
I think Chris Reifert from Autopsy was the same way, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's the first one that I think when I mentioned this combo, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because that was unusual, too. And that was like pure death metal stuff, so it was much closer to, it was underground. So, Exciter to me were like big rock stars, I thought, because I discovered them as a little kid in the 80s. And I thought everybody was a rock star if they had a record out. I thought they were millionaires and they were like, basically like Paul Stanley or something.
Right, yeah.
But it shows how much I fucking knew. I discovered later on I was insanely wrong about all that.
You discovered the grim reality later on when you became a musician yourself, yes.
Terrible truth.
Yeah.
So, but I have wonderful memories. I get very nostalgic when I hear that song. That's probably one of the most nostalgic moments I can have is listening to that Exciter song and a few other songs, mostly from the Speed, once again from the Speed Kills records and that mixtape that I had, and, because it was such an influential time when I was shaping up as a person, that everything that I heard was hardwired to my brain forever, ever since that.
Right. Yeah.
So Exciter definitely, it's just an important song. It's I think it's more like speed metal. I don't feel like it's thrash metal, but I don't want to get into the whole fucking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know what? I love genres. I love how you can create images of music in someone's brain just by a word that doesn't necessarily mean anything in particular. I love that. It's only when it starts to be a bickering thing and an obsessive categorization thing that I tune out. But I do love that genres exist, the words exist, and those categories exist. It's great fun to talk about music like that. But as usual, people take those things too far.
Yeah, I guess in fairly loose terms, you can always talk about it like that. But once, like you said, once people start bickering and arguing about well, Anthrax is thrash metal. No, they're speed metal. Haven't you heard Fistful of Metal, you asshole? That's like, do we have to fucking have this argument? Can't we just agree that it's really good music?
Exactly. I am so done with those discussions. But I mean, and it's okay to have opinions. And in this case, I'm with you. I think this falls firmly on the side of the speed metal field more than thrash. But yeah. In any case, as you said, it's a fucking great song, and that's what matters.
Who cares?
So let's get Mortiis all nostalgic with this one. So here is Exciter with Violence and Force.
Such
All right, we are back, and home stretch time. It is a wonderful closer that has been chosen by Howard. Very cute song called Plunging to Megadeath by Hallows Eve. So it's the first song on their first album, the uber classic Tales of Terror. I guess it's a bit of an underrated band. They're not frequently mentioned with the bigger names, but this first album is so important. Everything is iconic about it. The artwork, just striking. It was one of those records that you bought blind at the record store without having ever heard it.
You didn't need to listen to that. You just knew it was good.
You saw that cover, I'm getting that, right?
Yeah. It's a no-brainer. That's what they call it.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, it's a fantastic song, and actually, I wasn't sure if I was going to choose that song or the other classic hit that they have on that record called "The Metal Merchants."
Yes.
That's the one I think you find on Speed Kills 1, I believe. I mean, I keep going back to those compilations.
They're so important.
I feel.
Yeah.
But as a matter of fact, that song "Plunging to Megadeath," of course, I thought they were referring to the band, because I was such a little kid when I heard the song.
Yeah.
So I'm like, dude, are they singing about Megadeath?
Because that's the only time where you had heard the term. I mean, it's natural, yeah.
I don't think anybody has ever used the term Megadeath in a song title. Probably because of the band of the same name. But I mean, of course, Megadeath is spelled with just one E.
Exactly.
And this was spelled the proper way.
This is spelled right, yes.
Yeah. But that song was on the same mixtape as Exciter, and I remember I thought the song was so heavy and so dark and scary that I never fucking forgot it. I had to find out who this band was, and as you said, this is from their first album, and they did a couple of records after that, and for some weird reason, the first album I got with Hallows Eve, which was probably a few years after I discovered them, because they never got that big, and which meant that their records were pretty difficult to find over in Scandinavia, especially in Norway, which was in the 80s was very closed off. We never got into shows, and you could barely find any records here. You had to order all your records from Sweden, and so it was quite a process. So the first album I got with Hallows Eve was actually the Monument album, which is their third.
The third, yeah.
And I was a little by that point they had become, I think they'd shaken off that sort of dark edge that they had on the first one,
Yeah.
So
I mean, just compare the two album covers, and I think that tells you all you need to know about those differences.
Yeah. It's still a pretty decent album. I remember I liked it, and I was proud to have it because Hallows Eve was one of those rare bands, So it was like, hey man, I have a Hallows Eve album.
Yeah.
That's Metallica because everybody has Metallica.
Exactly.
And I have Hallows Eve. Fuck you. So it still had a lot of value in that sense, but it wasn't quite the same,
Yeah.
But I was finally able to find Tales of Terror, but it took me quite a few years. It's just one of those, pre-eBay days, and then pre-internet days. It was just one of those records that you kept having to hope it would show up in the second-hand stores and things like that.
Yeah. If you were anything like me, you had wish lists with the records that you wanted, and some records were on that wish list for years.
Long,
yeah. Some records took years to find. Yeah, that's how it was.
Back in those days, you had to get all these mail order lists sent home to you, and then place orders through actual letters with stamps, and hope that they still had that record, and it could take you months just to get a hold of one album.
Yeah.
It was serious stuff back in those days.
Sometimes bands you never had heard before. You just wanted them because of the name or someone had recommended them. And you were like, I really want to listen to that band kind of thing. But you had to wait months to listen to that band. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I would order records based on the cover alone.
Exactly. Lots
and there's
of them.
a hope it was good. And usually it was. That's how I got That's how I heard Celtic Frost the first time. I mean, imagine my fucking surprise. That was a fucking win.
I can imagine your face on the first listen. Yes.
And that was the Emperor's Return mini LP. So you get all those naked chicks at the same time, man.
Yeah.
It's fantastic music.
That was a win-win.
13 years old.
Yeah, that was a win-win.
That was a triumph.
Exactly.
That was a fucking epic victory, if you ask me.
It was the triumph of death. So there we go.
Yes, it was. I wasn't quite. Yeah, I actually knew about Hellhammer too, because every time you read about Celtic Frost in those old mags, they would always mention
Everyone
Hellhammer.
would mention, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the end of our list. So, Howard, we will be waiting anxiously for new Mortiis or otherwise material. We will also tune into that Emperor live stream to see how you will fare with that monstrous base in your hands.
The monster base, yeah.
So good luck for all of that. We will, as always, remain listening. Thank you very much for your participation and for your list. It was a pleasure to revisit some of these 80s favorites with you. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise.
So that was our 50th episode. I'm sure you will agree it was a special one. And here is the end of it with a metal anthem, Hallows Eve with Plunging to Megadeath. Thank you again to Mortiis. Thank you everyone for listening. We will see you on the next episode. Bye bye everyone.
Searching the Megadeath, searching the air.
Devil's